hopefully that's on. Hopefully the audio is working as well. I'm just going to play for a little bit just while it fills up. So if you can tell me if you can hear the guitar well enough or not, then that'd be good, thank you. Hey Michael, how you doing? Hello, Doctor. I won't try and pronounce the rest if that's okay. Anantha. Hello. Thank you. Hey, Chandrab, Robin. Hey again, Nikita. Hello. Good. So good. Because mainly what I want to do with this is I'm going to be mucking all my settings, so I need to make sure the guitar sounds loud enough so you can hear any changes. Hey Xander, hey Stefan, oh Texas, all my exes live in Texas. That's not true, I don't have any. Okay, excellent. Hey Javi, Callum, Ronnie, oh Florida, nice one, and Mexico. Heavy metal, okay, heavy. Oh right, heavy, right, heavy, makes sense now. Hey Rob, Utah, what do I know about Utah? Nothing much. It was one of the beaches in Normandy. That's it. Cool. So, right. Everyone who's joined so far, I'm going to keep saying this throughout before we get going. I'm going to be talking about my guitar, well, my equipment, so to speak, and how to get sound that you can play Def Leppard with. Now, because I can't show what I'm using and show how I'm tweaking with it, I've made a cheat sheet, which you can find in the comment, well, in the description. It's on my Patreon. It's a free post. Get the cheat sheet. It's like basically my recording setup, my settings for the boss. There's a little diagram showing the order of pedals. They're all boss pedals, just for visual sake. And there is a text document with what I'm gonna say, basically, or what I think I'm gonna say, and then you can look through that. So yeah, check out the post, the link in the description, to get the visual documents that will help follow along with this. And we'll get cracking on soon. I'll just wait for it to get up a bit more. Let me look through some more comments. Diego, MF Rock Guitar, Dylan again, yeah. Tell us what equipment to buy so we can get the rad Def Leppard sound. Well, hopefully, I won't tell you exactly what to buy, but I'll give you some tips, because I'm not endorsed by anything or anyone, so we'll see. Hey, from Argentina, we got a lot of Spanish speaking people, which is great, and I hope you can understand me. I don't speak that much Spanish, none at all really, actually. Hey Darren, Stefan, Alex, heavy metal, Viv Soul. Yeah, I did do a video of that Viv Soul at the end. Oh, my cable's a bit funny. Let me just push that in a bit more. Hang on. Yeah, I did oh, my guitar's a bit dirty as well on the old capacitor. Yeah, I did a solo for that. Hey Anderso, Daniel, hola, look, how's it going? Okay, so we've got about 50 odd people, and it is, it's not quite 6 o'clock yet, so I'll just wait a couple more minutes. I was trying to learn, I'll get my muscle memory built up for this next cover I'm going to do. This is the end part of the solo. There's a lot of slides, so I'm just trying to get used to that. See if anyone knows what it is. So it's the end part of the solo, goes something like... yeah, so if you get that one, you get 10 points, 10 virtual points. What have we got to... I haven't tabbed out on Patreon yet, but I do have a lot of stuff tabbed out on Patreon. I'm trying to work through all my videos because there's a lot of them. So basically on Patreon, I'm tabbing out every new cover I tab out, and then I'm starting to go through all the old ones as well. So eventually I'd like to have all my covers notated, like notation notes I call them, because it's like how I play them. Whether or not it's right is another thing. Hi Ian. So I'm going for, well, basically my sound is based on what I'd say is the Hysteria era onwards to maybe about retroactive. So we're gonna go through that. Hey Paul, hey Torquay, and Rezo, Queensryche. Don't really listen to them. Sorry. Right. Okay, so yeah, I'm from Scotland. Right, it's past 6. There's about 50 odd people, 58. That's great. So I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna go through it. Once again, there's a link in the description for some visual aids to help you with this. Which basically goes over my equipment, how I set it up, a diagram which shows you like the order of pedals and the type of pedals you might need if you want to get this sound, and I've got my boss settings on there as well. Okay, so, and there's a text document if you want to read my thoughts on everything as well. Okay, right, so. And also, yeah, I'll be posting this video up afterwards as well. It will like render out for like, I don't know, half a day or something, or a day. It might be like an hour long, or half an hour to an hour at least. So if you don't catch the stream, then it will be uploaded later on. Right. Great, it's got more people coming in. Ronnie, Gran Yaris Small, love your colour. Cheers, 2991. Right. Okay. So, if you start with a guitar for trying to get Def Leppard sound, ideally you want one which has a humbucker in the bridge. This gives you the decent sound and distortion. Have you ever noticed if you play a single coil guitar with distortion, it sounds a bit weak. It sounds a little bit. There's a certain term for it which is maybe not as clean to say. Yeah, it just sounds weak. So you want to go for something with a bridge pickup. This is like a HSS. This is humbucker single coil, single coil. You notice that Steve, you'd have three humbuckers. You'd only ever use the outside too, but his humbucker, you could coil tap it to turn it into a single coil. So you had the versatility there. Phil had some which were like that, humbucker. He had some with single coils as well. For the clean stuff, you want to have a single coil, or like I said, something where you can split the humbucker to get you a more clean sound. So I'll just demonstrate. It's just a normal turn up a bit more. A normal just straight distortion sound. I'll split the coil of the humbucker, or go in between. You hear it gets it's not quite a bright sound with that, and you don't quite get the distortion or as much of the gain coming through. So ideally, super strats as they call them, with a humbucker in. Another thing you want is to have a lock-in tremolo. Now this is like a licensed Floyd Rose. From the Hysteria era onwards, especially live, there's a lot of like whammy bar usage. There's some on Pyromania, of course, because Phil's solos. But if you don't have a whammy bar, and especially one that locks at this end, then you might not be able to do a lot of the stuff that they do. You know, there's the typical, you know, all the kind of wanky harmonic sounds, and then there's a lot of vibrato over chords as well, like. So ideally, you want a whammy bar, locking preferably. So of course, a lot of guitars do this. Jackson, they've got Charvel. Ibanez do really good guitars at a decent price. In terms of Les Pauls, you can't really find as much with Gibson, but there's a lot of other brands that do, like imitation Les Pauls, where you can get the lock-in tremolo as well. Okay, I just noticed there's a lot of comments going through, so let me just catch up on that. So that's the basic of the guitar, anyway. And like I say, I've got this written out in my text document as well, if you miss what I say or can't understand. Hi Matthew, I'll get to that. There's a certain order on the Boss pedal about how it's ordered, but it's pretty much how I put it in the document. Hey Caramel, Anna Michael, I might show at the end. Let's do the pre-chorus. I think I just did that there actually. Okay. Yep. Yeah, so heavy metal. Yeah, you'll find that if you have a humbucker single coil, most likely have 5 positions. So the bottom position is the bridge, and then you have the in between, then the middle, then the in between of the middle and the neck, and then just the neck. But you can get lots of different types. I mean, my Charvel is 2 pickups, but it's a 5-way because it splits the humbuckers as well. So there's a lot of options out there. You know, I obviously went for Jackson because I like the look of Jacksons, and there wasn't as many around back when I was getting my guitar. So I kind of wanted that. I wanted to be a bit hipsterish. But now you get a lot of really good guitars that give you a lot for your money. So, you know, definitely shop around for that. Okay, so we'll get on to my Boss unit. Hi from Denmark. How's it going? Okay, look, yeah, so all my stuff comes from the Boss ME50, which is like ancient now. I mean, it's almost 20 years old, if not that already. And I've just been able to find a nice setup with it. And I think I really got happy with it when I introduced the Palmer speaker sound, because I'll get to in a second that provides a bit of consistency for the tone. But let me just go through the Boss ME50. So if you haven't already, post on Patreon all the visuals. You can follow along with me. The first kind of effect we get to, well, I don't use the tone modify, which is basically like an EQ setting. I don't use that. So what I go to first is the compressor. That's the compressor. Let me take it off, and you'll hear that, especially on clean sounds, and especially when it comes to doing harmonics, you need a compressor just to bring out the sustain. And what it does, the compressor, especially on the clean sound, it takes all the quiet sounds and all the loud sounds and compresses them together, squeezes them together, so everything's consistent. When you're on a clean setting, like an 80s clean setting, that's what you want. You want to have that rhythm, you want to have that called spankiness coming out. So this is me just no effects on whatsoever, no compression. I'll go to my neck pickup. I'll play a harmonic. Kind of dies out. So I put the sustain on about 11:30, 12 o'clock, and I've got the lev on 12 o'clock. A lot of compressors will come up with other settings where you can sort out how quick the compression comes on and the release of it. So you have to experiment around with that a bit. But this is quite simple. I just set it in the middle, and this was actually like a Richie Sambora setting I came across. So you might not be able to hear it as well. I'm not sure how it's picking up, but the sound there was a lot more even. It was louder because it was able to take the loud notes and the quiet notes, squeeze them together, and we're able to lift up the volume. And you also get the, what do you call it? The percussiveness, so you can hear the sound of my plectrum. You know, if you were to do like more R&B stuff, you know, Michael Jackson's Human Nature, in case you're wondering. You know, it gives you the rhythmic feel there. So that's why a compressor is important for clean sound, but I'll show you with the distortion as well eventually. I feel it's vital for Def Leppard because the distortion sound on Def Leppard, of course we know, I've just kind of caught through the comments there, people talking about Rockmans. On Hysteria especially, they used Rockmans, which were the little headphone amplifier, kind of like this. This is the Rockbox, a variation, and they used them for the orchestration purposes because they were distorted, but they were clean sounding that you could layer up and it wouldn't get too messy. And you know they still use a lot of heavy EQ when they're layering them up, but that specific type of tone, you know, is pretty much the Boston tone as well. It was made by Tom Scholes, the guitarist in Boston. So where I feel that the compression is needed is because your distortion is not going to be full on gain. You want it to be still clean sounding, kind of like Brian May, I guess. So you need the compressor on there to give you the sustain, because you know Def Leppard uses a lot of harmonics, and there's a lot of single note parts as well. So I feel the compression on that gives you the desired tone, especially with your distortion. And I put a note in the post that's linked in the description, the text post. If you're trying out distortions, try it out with a compressor to give you an idea of what it's giving you. Let me just look through some comments here because there's been a lot flying by. Could you do Left Eyes Code? I'll talk about any requests at the end as I just go through all this first. That's cool. Hi Robin. Yeah, I don't know, some of the Jacksons these days, I mean I'd like a decent soloist, a USA soloist, but a lot of them I don't really like the look of now. They've kind of changed them about a bit too much. Hack the Scratch Golf, yeah, the Rockmans were heavily modified, and you know they probably would have done everything and anything to them. It was the whole Hysteria album's heavily EQ'd from like everything. Like I read some, I read a lot of interviews with like Shipley, and then there was a random Dutch engineer who worked on the album. I'll need to find that interview again. But he was talking about the amount of EQ they're using on the vocals, and it, you know, set the tone. Everything had to kind of fit in. So I don't think anything was just stock. Maybe Pour Some Sugar on Me more so, because it was done in quite a quick time. But the rest I think were heavily modified and EQ'd. So you know, Rockman's into amps, into speaker sims, into whatever. Hello. Okay. Right. So I've talked about compression. Next on my signal chain of the Boss compressor into is a noise suppressor, and I've just got that set on 12 o'clock. If I was to take it off and put the distortion on, you can hear all sorts of weird noises coming through. Also because I'm sitting right next to my computer. I'm not sure where that's picking up, but I'm getting a lot of signal noise and probably 60-second hertz and stuff like that. So I'm not sure if it's vital to have a noise suppressor on. Maybe it just suits me for this application because I'm right next to my computer. But live, especially in the rack days, they did have noise gate units, like the drummer gate rack effect. Okay. Cheers, Robin. Good that you could hear the example of all the noise that I get from sitting next to my computer, and the lights as well. Lights make a lot of noise. Okay. After the noise suppressor, on my effects pedal is reverb. I don't use reverb on the effects pedal, but I add it at the end when I do my covers. I add it on the recording software. So I'll come to that again at the end of the order of the pedals, because I like to add reverb at the end, because if you add it before any kind of EQ, then I like the reverb to be high end and to be like a nice high end sheen. So I add it after EQ, after right at the end. So I'm not using reverb on here, just to let you know. Okay, so we get to the distortion. Now, I'm on a variation of what was the Blues Driver Boss effect, but it's just called a lead setting. I don't know. I didn't think too much of this, but I'm going to take the sustain off, the compression off, sorry, and you'll hear what it sounds like just on its own, once I turn off, obviously. Okay, so decent enough sounding. You know, quite clean sounding. I usually have the drive set about either 10 o'clock or 12 o'clock, somewhere in between. I usually don't go any less, and I usually don't go any further, because you don't get the effect of the drive if it's any less than that on this. And if you go too far, you start getting a bit too much noise. But you can hear on that, it's not clean sounding, but you get the individual notes coming through. So let me put the compressor back on, and you'll hear when I start playing chords, I'll do a harmonic, and you'll hear how long it sustains. So it sustains a lot more than without the compression. So there you can see why compression is needed for that. On here we've got bottom and tone, which is just like EQ settings. I usually have them set the same. I've got them about 2 o'clock. I don't know how much it makes a difference if they're both set on the same. But like I say, I clean up my tone afterwards. And I've got the level set on 12 o'clock. The level is just basically, it gives me the difference between the distortion on and off. So usually I don't set the level for the distortion level, I set it so that the clean isn't as quiet. So usually I don't have it much beyond 12 o'clock there. So that was the distortion, and let me just look through some more comments. I noticed there was quite a lot. Hey Rezo, do you think graphic EQ is better before the amp or in the effects loop? There's reasons to have both, really. You know, Brian May would have a treble booster, which would basically, knock off the low end, go before, just out of his guitar before he hit the amp, because Voxes were quite dark sounding and his guitar was, I guess, dark sounding. So there's an example of, he would have the treble booster, so it would boost the treble, and then when he turned up the amp, it wouldn't be as muddy sounding, it'd be clean. So that's an example of having it before. I think you'll find in most amps the EQ's in the preamp section before it gets to the power amp. So it's all about tone shaping, but you can always experiment with that. Like I say, I like to have EQ right at the end so I can then shape my tone to fit with the tracks. How can you get Steve's tone? Well, he uses a Firebird on the Armageddon song on In the Round. That helps add to the tone. And both him and Phil were using Randall rack-mounted amps with TC Electronic chorus and delay. And I am going to make a video at some point to give like a chronological tour of the equipment they used. Yeah, Hack to Scratch Golf. I'm going to talk about that at the end. I've got a tour program, and I'm going to talk about some of the different effects that they had. And yeah, they had a GSP-1 or GSP-21, I think it was. That was one of their preamps. They had another one, like a Bradshaw amp as well. Charters, yeah, the ME80 is probably better than the ME50. Hi, well, this is just a stock Duncan design pickup in here. Don't know the model name, but it suits me fine. Right, so we've got the distortion sound. We've got distortion with the compressor on, which gives us a nice compressed tone, nice sustain for the harmonics. I'm going to show you now, I have chorus on for my modulation effect. So with chorus, you find that I think more so you want chorus than, let's say, flanger when doing the live stuff. But there are examples of flanger live and on record. But for me, most of the time, if you just want to thicken up the guitar, I like to use chorus. I like the sound of chorus. A lot of people don't. So the way I have mine set up, I have mine on a stereo chorus, but my guitar is still running in mono. Now with the stereo chorus, if you'd listen to headphones, you'd hear the kind of chorus line waver between each ear. But because it's mono, you're not getting that effect. However, I think the sound of the stereo chorus going through mono gives it a particular sound which I quite like, which it's not too muddy, but it gives enough of a chorusy sound where, yeah, it's nice basically. So I'm on a clean sound now. And I'll show you the chorus off. Here's chorus on. So here it thickens it up quite a lot there. Now, on my effects pedal, I have three knobs I can twiddle. I have the rate, which is the speed of the chorus. Now, a tip if you're doing any kind of experimenting with effects pedals, turn them up full and get an idea of what each kind of knob does to like the nth degree where you never use it. And that gives you an idea of what the effects does. So, the rate key, I've got it set at like 9 o'clock, slow rate. If I was to set it higher, that's only at 12, and you hear you're getting like a Leslie effect. But one thing to note is the relationship between rate and the next knob, which is depth. So I have the depth quite high when I have the rate low. And if I was to turn the rate up, I would turn the depth down. Because, I mean, I'm not going for any kind of specific effect. I just want that chorus sound, but doesn't like waver the pitch too much. So usually when I'm setting up the chorus, I'll set the rate where I want it, and I'll put the depth all the way up. So this is the depth all the way up. And it's maybe a bit too much. If I put it on distortion, I back it off to a point where it's no longer affecting it too much, and then you can just kind of find that biting point in between. Like I say, usually I set my rate low, depth high, but I do find sometimes I want something different. I'll bring the rate up a little bit more, but you have to back off on the depth if you do so. That's what I think for the Def Leppard style tone. And then the last knob on the modulation is like the level of the effect. I usually have that between 12 and 3. On a clean sound, I want more of the chorus to come through, and on a lead sound, because it thickens it up. If you're playing a lot of just heavy rhythm, then I back off the chorus so it's not too loud. So let me put it up to 12, and you hear it's not as prominent. And that's it back to 3 o'clock there. So with the flanger though, Andy Summers is good at getting a flanger to sound like a chorus. You basically turn the rate down, but I think it's only a specific flanger that gives it a really good chorus sound. So that's that. Right, before I go into delay, there was a lot of comments again, so excuse me, I'll just read through. Sorry, I don't read Spanish. Tonight I think it's in standard tuning. I've never used an Axe Effects, no, and of course now Def Leppard they're using just the Axe Effects 3, whereas the last tour, a couple of tours ago, they had the Axe Effects, but it was used as maybe just like effects. They still were using the Marshall JMP1 for the preamp, but now it's all Axe Effects. Do you like the chorus effect on the 5150 album? Yes, that's a specific type of chorus. More like a detune chorus, where it's stereo guitar, one side's tuned down, one side's tuned up. Eventide were big on making that sound. Hey Fenric, Stand Up, Kick Love and Emotion, or Animal, one of those two. If you play the part, I see, which is just on the pre-chorus. I'll do some requests at the end once I get through all this. Okay. Right, so last thing up is the delay. Now, I like to have delay on quite a lot. If you're a true traditional guitarist, they say you're just hiding behind your mistakes when you have delay on, because it does make you feel better when you play. It's like it gives you a bit of comfort underneath. But you definitely hear on the In the Round concert, which is where I'm kind of basing my sound on, that you know, whether it's post-production, there is a lot of delay on the lead lines, you know, especially in the leads, and certainly on parts like Steve's intro on Hysteria. I think it's post-production, but you know, you can hear his guitar on the left and then the delay tone on the right, and it's a nice sound. But the type of delay they were using, the TC2290, I think it was quite prominent because there was something in that unit which meant that when you were playing, it would duck the delay signal, and then as soon as you stopped playing, the delay would come back up. So I've always been quite finicky on trying to find that nice delay setting sound where you're playing and it's not getting too much in the way, but when you stop playing, you can hear the repeats. So on my delay pedal, the setting I have it on, it could be any one of the first four, because I don't use the time setting, I tap in my tempo. So yeah, I just have it on, what's that, 25 to 125 milliseconds, no reason. And then the time knob, again, I don't need it to be anywhere because I tap in my tempo. But let's say you've got a delay pedal where you can't tap in the tempo. There's websites out there where you can tap in a tempo into like on a button, and it gives you the tempo beat, like the BPM, beats per minute. And then from then you can figure out, do some quick maths and get your right millisecond setting. So there's always options around if you don't have the tap tempo function. Feedback, I've got mine set about 8:30, 9 o'clock. It's basically to give me like two or three repeats, pretty much. Let's have a sound. Yeah, so I'm getting about 2 audible ones, one kind of in the back. Yeah, it just gives you a nice little bit behind you to play along with. And then finally, the effects level on that is set to it's either between 12 or 2 o'clock, depending on the song I'm doing. There's some songs where you want to have a more audible delay, especially on live covers. I tend to put it up a bit more. So that's pretty much it for the boss. And then I'm going into my speaker sound. And I've shown, if you've just joined us in the last, like, I don't know, how long have we been going, 30 minutes? 10 minutes or so. I've got cheat sheets available on my Patreon. There's a link. Everyone can get access to them. It shows my recording setup and boss settings and stuff and blah blah blah. And there's a diagram from the Palmer speaker sim manual, which basically tells you what it does, because I get a lot of questions about what it's doing. The best way I describe it is, it just allows me to keep my tone consistent. I mean, I still have my old amp, and you know, when I was rehearsing, like last year, I was using the amps in the rehearsal studio, and you know, I'd have my settings set up, I'd go into the amp, and then depending on whether, you know, I was playing quiet, playing loud, you'd get a completely different tone coming out, because that's just how audio works in that sense. And you know, you could just be fiddling about with the EQ, and when it comes to a live environment, when you know you have to mic up a speaker, the angle of the mic on the speaker can completely change your tone. So what the Palmer does, the Palmer just simulates micing up a cab, and it gives you a consistent tone, like, every time. So then you can just focus on your effects, or your preamp in effects. And in a recording situation, yeah, I don't have to worry about miking up an amp, I don't have to worry about being loud. I just go from my Boss into the Palmer with a, you know, normal guitar jack. Then from there you get a balanced signal, it's an XLR, so like a mic cable, and that goes into my like computer interface. I'm now using a Focusrite, and then that goes into the computer. So with the Palmer, I mean, there's a couple of settings on there, because I've just got the DI, but Def Leppard have been using the rack mounted versions since the Hysteria tour, and even I think they use them when recording as well. But yeah, on my little box, there's not many settings. There's like a mellow, normal, and bright filter. I always have on bright. And there's a attenuator, which is basically if you're using it with like with an amp, you can quieten it down a little bit. But it's not one of the ones where you get certain speaker sims where you can put it after an amp head and you don't need a speaker and it won't blow. That one you need a speaker, so just be careful which one you get if you're using it with like between an amp head and then a speaker. It's not a load box version, but you can get them. Yeah, so the Palmer gives me a certain sound, or allows me to keep a consistent sound. And like I say, Def Leppard was using them pretty much since the Hysteria tour until very recently, where they are now on the Axe-Fx. And then I go from there into my audio interface, which just turns the signal into a digital signal, well, ones and zeros, so the computer can recognize them, and then it goes on to the software. I'm using Logic to record. I used to use Pro Tools, but you know, you can get whatever you want out of there. And then in Logic, I'm adding EQ, which is just basically cleaning it up. I'm taking a lot of the bass frequencies out, so it fits better with the backing track. And then I've got some reverb on there as well, just to give a bit of space. Okay. Let me just look through some comments again. Where do we get to? Hi William. Steve only used the boss pedal, right? No. From what I've read from the great website, which is no longer there, Steve Clark Guitar, on the Pyromania tour, him and Phil were both using what's the Marshall amp? The famous Marshall amp that everyone uses, JCM 800, I think. They're using a few of them, and Steve had a Morley preamp pedal with a Boss chorus and Boss delay. Phil was using, I think he was just going straight into the amps. Then on the Hysteria tour, they're both using Randall. What's the name? I can get it. I've got it here. Or do I? I did have it. On this Hysteria tour, they're using the Randall RG100 rack mount, which, funnily enough, I think that's the one Dimebag Darrell used in Pantera. Anyway, so him and Phil were both using those Randall preamps, and then they had the TC Electronic, was it 1210, the chorus and flanger, and then the 2290, the delay unit. And that was their effects for the Hysteria tour. Then we have, yeah, there's a lot of delay on that tour. I did Charters. I played my recent Too Late for Love cover on the Charvel, but it's mainly because I didn't have the Charvel, and I've done all the Def Leppard covers, really. I mean, there's a lot I could improve on, because some of them I'm not playing things particularly right, but maybe not quite there yet. Okay, what's out? So Matthias, how to get the sustain of the Hysteria tour? I don't know if you saw before, but having a compressor on before your distortion gives helps the guitar sustain a bit better, especially for the harmonics. I mean, I don't know how well I was able to demo it earlier, but let me play harmonics without the compressor. That's me trying to get those little harmonics in the 3rd fret. Let me put the compressor on, you can hear it comes out a bit easier. It'd be best if I was on a bridge pickup as well. Okay, so compression off. Maybe again, a couple of seconds worth, compression on. It's maybe at least doubling the amount of time you get there. So yeah, put a compressor on before your distortion. I think it's key to getting that sound. And a kind of cleanish distortion. I mean, you could turn your gain on your distortion up all the way, but you'll get very heavy metal sound, which is not, like death metal sound, which is not what you want here. So I think that's how you get the sustain. And also, clever use of delay pedals. Like I said, a lot of use of delay, especially on the In Around live concert. And when you have delay on, you know, it's giving you like an extra bit behind. You know, because what you're playing is getting played again pretty much, so it makes everything sustain a bit more. So that's how I'd do that. Kyle, tips on getting decent Pyromania tone? Yeah, it's, well, on the Pyromania 2 it was like JCM 800 amps with some chorus and delay. On the actual record, I don't know what they settled on, but the way they built up the tracks on Pyromania wasn't like as it was on Hysteria. It was more so they'd use certain guitars for the kind of lower end of the EQ, certain guitars for the mid range, certain guitars for the treble range. So you'd have basically the rhythm tracks being, you know, Les Pauls and Telecasters like layered up, but not to the extent of like Hysteria. But that's how they got a pretty good tone. Okay, Chad, yeah, the delay. Since you're using tap tempo to time your delay, is the delay set to simple quarter note or maybe dotted eighth note? Right, so if I was trying to do a dotted eighth note like you two, I'd have to put the timing in. And I think you need two separate delay times to get the edge sound. But with me, I just tap in either a quarter note or a bit quicker than eighth note there. So that's what I do. Look, well, hopefully I've talked a bit about Pyromania tone there. JCM 800, right, okay, it was that one. Joe, Jackson stock pickup or Seymour Duncan. The ones in here are Duncan Design, which is like the level below Seymour Duncan. They seem okay. No doubt it could get better. Okay, Marco, yeah, Steve's tone on Armageddon at Live in the Round. Well, it'll be the Rando RG100 preamp with some chorus, some delay, and he's using a Firebird, which has his pickup is less output. So what I would do when I was playing it live, I would play my Charvel and I'd use the humbucker, but I'd use the coil split pickup thing on it. So it was a little bit cleaner sounding, but also maybe creamy sounding as well. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Yeah, now I'm here, I might try and do that one, yeah. Okay, yeah, you need a lot of different, well, 8 voicing choruses, that's pretty cool. Okay, so, let me just look through my visuals that I posted up to see if I should, see if I've explained everything. If there's anything else you want me to go over in terms of what I'm using or how I have my stuff set up, I can do that. But I'll maybe talk about what the band have been using throughout the years, from Hysteria onwards at least. But yeah, if you look on my Patreon, like I keep saying, I've got some cheat sheets which show you what I think is what you need to get the sound and the order. So I've got one titled Basic Pedal Board Idea. So the idea is, you know, a guitar with a bridge pickup and a whammy bar, going into a compressor, going into distortion, then you have your modulation, either chorus or flanger, maybe both, then into a delay pedal, then at the end, equalizer to make it fit with everything, and some reverb for the end. Now there's no hard rules about where you should put your pedals, but that's the way I would go about it. And like I say on the sheet, I just have all Boss pedals because just for visual purposes, so they're all the same size. But yeah, so I think that's okay. I can close all these windows and go on about the next part. And yeah, there's a text document which is, I hope I've said everything I'm meaning to say in that. But if you don't understand my accent, you can look at that. Okay. Okay, Rezo, I'm using the DI, so there's again on that Patreon link, there's a picture of my setup. I go from a guitar into my Boss, into the Palmer speaker sound, XLR out into my interface. No amp involved, so I can play whatever volume I want and get the same tone. Is it better to use a mid-gain pickup or even a single coil one for the typical cleanish dirty guitar sound? I'm not as familiar with that idea. I mean, I change my distortion sound whenever I'm doing a kind of cleaner sound. Luckily for me, I just need to press that variation button to give me that blues driver tone. But with my setup, I don't really get the best out of my pickups because I don't get because I've got the compressor on and because my sound's quite processed, I don't get that creamy vintage sound you'd get by like, you have your Marshall turned up all the way and then you can get a clean tone by backing off your volume. I can't get that with the compression kind of setup I have. So depends on what you're going for really. If you're doing a lot of like vintage rock, then yeah, you maybe want just a more vintage style pickup, one that isn't too high gain output. Well, do I prefer the Rockbox or the Rockman? They both sound very similar and they're both very limited. I think that's the key thing you always need to remember with the Def Leppard sound is they tweaked the hell out of the Rockman they had. They got it modified and there was a lot of EQ work going on as well. But they both sound pretty cool for what they are. When I'm playing live with the ME50, yeah, what I'd do is the only change I'd make is I would put it on the memory mode so I basically have 3 sounds I could like switch between. So I'd have a basic rhythm one, which would be the usual sound but with less chorus, maybe less gain. A lead one which had more chorus, and then a clean one which had more compression to make it more spanky sounding. And then I've used the TC Electronic flashback for delay, and I've got a little tap tempo thing for that as well. So I'd always have delay on, unless I was able to think right and turn off. Okay, is there a pickup that makes the sound more punchier? I'm sure there is. If you go on any pickup website, they have great detail on. I mean, what's the one Phil uses now? Is it Super 3 or Super Distortion? You can see the output levels and the certain bands of EQ they affect better. So, yeah. So Phil's always used he's always used DiMarzio, either Super 3 or Super Distortion. Steve had on his Les Pauls Dirty Finger pickups, I think, if they weren't stock ones, I believe. Cool. Great. Right, like I say, if you're just tuning in, there's a cheat sheet in the description, which basically goes over what I've been talking about. What time are we looking at? 43. Right, I'll give a brief history on what I think on the equipment they've used, and like I say, I want to make a video which talks about like each era. Mainly from like what I call the rack mount era, so from Hysteria onwards, because before it's just amps and pedals. But with the rack mounts, there's so much variations. So I want to make a video on that, but I thought I'd maybe just like briefly talk through so you get an idea of the type of gear they use in it and why I'm picking certain pedals in that cheat sheet. So like I say, on the Hysteria tour, they had the Randall RG100 preamp, which gave a certain sound. I guess they maybe felt it could emulate that Rockman sound. I mean, Rockman did have rack effects. I can't remember when they came out, but maybe they didn't feel they were enough to give them that versatility at the time, so they went for the Randall preamp. And then, like I said, they have the TC1210, which was the flanger chorus, and then they had the TC2290, which was the delay unit. And that was going into a Palmer speaker sim, one of the rack mounted ones. So the Hysteria tour, they're both the same, Phil and Steve. So pretty much preamp, and I believe I read when, I think in that environment, in order to get the sustain, they'd be playing at such high volumes that you'd get natural feedback from the monitors going back into the guitars and such. And I believe Phil would say like on a rhythm setting, their presence would be down at like 50%, 60%, and then on a lead setting, they like put it right up to 99%. So that would give them that difference in tone. And you can hear, yeah, they're using chorus. There's a lot of delay as well. So it was quite a simple setup. And if you hear bootlegs compared to the in the round concert, you can hear that there's a difference with some of the sounds. Obviously, there's some post production on the DVD release. So that was the Hysteria tour. Sorry, there's a couple of more comments. Look, I don't think you can get that tone, the best of both worlds tone on a humbucker because they use single coils. I can get something similar on my Charvel with the in-between setting, which I'm going to do a cover of pretty soon. Yeah, heavy metal. I used to watch all those kind of interviews and read all sorts, and yeah, that's basically why I'm obsessed about it all. So when it came to the Adrenalize tour, and Hack the Scratch Code pointed out, they used different stuff, and I actually have here, it's given to me by a good friend in Japan. It's a program from the 7-day weekend tour, and I was searching all over the internet for pictures of their rack effects because I remember seeing them on old websites. I couldn't remember. I'm like, oh, I can't find them, and then I didn't realize, but both Phil and Steve list their equipment in this tour program, which is really cool. So, and I've got an interview. I've got a scan from a magazine which Phil talks about recording Adrenalize, and he said that he tried a whole bunch of stuff, but then he ended up going back to the Rockman basically, which was just gave him the sound he needed. But on both Phil and Viv here, they have Bradshaw rack mount effects, and Bob Bradshaw was or still is. He basically pioneered the rack mount effects for all the studio wizards, like Michael Landau and Steve Lukather, and he, basically, because back then there was a time where, pedals all had different connectors and different buttons to push, and they weren't making specific guitar rack mount effects, and guys wanted to have the studio gear. So it's like, well, how do you make a switching system for everything? So Bob Bradshaw was the guy who kind of pioneered that in America, at least. There was a guy over here that did it. I can't remember his name. Pete Cornish, I think. So essentially, it became a thing in the 80s to have a Bob Bradshaw rack, which was basically, a fancy Soldano preamp, a DBX 160 compressor, the infamous tri-stereo chorus, Ditrinox? No, something like that. I can't quite say it. Ditronics, I think it is. The famous stereo tri-chorus effect. Different reverbs, different delays, all sorts. So on the Adrenalize tour, because Viv had a Bob Bradshaw rack mount before joining Def Leppard, because you can see it in a couple of his like tutorial videos from back in the day. So I don't know whether he put Phil onto one or whether just naturally Phil was going to get one anyway. So I've got the list here. So for Phil's rack mount effects on the Adrenalize tour, yeah, Bob Bradshaw custom audio electronics. He had a Sennheiser, I guess, wireless system. So he had the let's see, because it's a bit oddly ordered. So his two preamps were pretty much Rockman XPR and a Digitech GSP21. Then in terms of his effects, he had the 2290 delay he still had, and the 1128. Drummer DS gate. He's still using the Palmer speaker sims. That's pretty much it. I guess he was getting most of his effects from the TC Electronics still, and then he still had the power amps, the Randall power amps as well, and the Marzo Super 3s. There we go. Whereas Vivian's is a bit more in depth, because I think he got this. He must have got it on the Whitesnake tour, maybe, or maybe a bit afterwards. So he was using the same. He was using the GSP21 Digitech preamp with the Rockman XPR preamp. Then he had the Bradshaw switching system. So he had the Eventide H3000, which was someone was saying before about Van Halen's tone on 5150. That gives you the detune effect. But Vivian here was using it for, you can hear it on the stereo on the intro. There's like a chorus, like a choir sound in the background. That's from the Eventide, and that's from Vivian. So you had that in there. You had a Loft Chorus Series 450, don't know what that is. The TC Electronic 1120 equalizer, the 2290 digital delay, drummer gate. You had a BBE Sonic Maximizer, just to make things sound a bit more spanking, I guess. Yeah, so that was pretty much it. And then I think when they got into the Slang tour, that's when they started bringing the JMP1 preamp instead of the other preamps they used. And then from then on, you can see on the recent rig rundowns, you know, Phil was still using a lot of stuff he'd used. Like from the 2011 rig rundown, I think he says in that this is the rig he's been using for the last like 15 years or so, which would make it around Slang. So he had the JMP1, the preamp Marshall. He was still using the TC Electronic Chorus flanger, the 1210 I think it is. He had TC Electronic, I think G major systems for the delay. He had Alesis MIDI verbs. He was still using the Palmer speaker stem. He still had the drummer gate. And of course, very recently they're now onto the Axe effects, the all-in-one box. Now they're just using that on its own, I think. Whereas a couple of tours ago they had, I think they're both still using preamps. So Phil was still using the JMP1, Viv for something else, and they were going into the Axe effects for like effects, chorus, delays, reverb, what have you. But now they're on the Axe Effects 3, and apparently they're getting everything with that. So there you go. That shows you they're still keeping up with the times. Mick, yeah, I think really the Hysteria era live sound is always what I like. Look, I'm not sure if they used the tri-chorus on the album. I've never seen it mentioned. I don't think they've mentioned chorus a lot really. Whenever I've read Mike Shipley interviews. But you know, a lot of the stuff was the Rockman, and Rockman had its own chorus, but I'm not sure whether that's what they used. Matthias, no, I think the Adrenalize tour is more process sounding. The Hysteria tour is still a little bit raw, and you maybe don't get that sound on the actual movie release, the DVD or video release in the round. Because maybe there's a lot of post-production, but I think the Adrenalize tour is more processed. It's less, yeah, it's more, it's kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's just processed, I would say. Not to say it's bad, I actually quite like that sound for certain songs. Heavy metal, Viv used to have a lot of Soldano gear. Yeah, he was using that on the video where I saw him first have the Bob Bradshaw rack, the pink Soldano preamp, which Bob Bradshaw made into a custom audio electronics preamp as well. Rock and roll, no, on Pyromania's amps, but they layered them up in a way where they layered up the guitars on the albums where you have a certain guitar do the low end sound, so like Les Pauls or something, and then Telecasters for the high end, and layer them together and you get a nice big sound. Matthew, do you think Steve's triple pickup setup was more for looks, or did it have any purpose other than the bridge humbucker? I'm not sure. You know, you had the coil tap in there, so, and I don't recall seeing any footage where you can tell whether he's on the middle pickup. I would say probably not using it, but he might have had a nice sound in there for the clean stuff, although he wouldn't use a clean sound a lot. The only clean sound I can think of him using would be on the outro of Gods of War, because the other clean sounds he'd have on Bringing on the Heartbreak and Foolin', and Angel Dire the Hunter would be on the double neck. I mean, that's just on the In the Round concert, so I don't know. But I'm not sure, to be honest. I wouldn't know to say, but I would say it's probably. I mean, it looks really cool, and Phil had that on his um, Ibanez Destroyers, and he admitted saying that he never used the middle pickup. It was just for looks, so maybe it was that as well. Hey, Myron, the multi-track for the early draft of Portsmouth Sugar and Me. Yeah, I've said this before. I'm pretty sure the multi-tracks for Sugar, Rock of Ages, and Bring On the Heartbreak were leaked because they were used in that Def Leppard movie from like the early 2000s. They actually used parts of the multi-tracks in that movie. And in fact, I'm sure when there's a bit of them recording Sugar, they're actually using like the Mutt Lange vocal, maybe to make his voice sound different, I don't know. But yeah, so those were leaked years and years ago, and I got them like round about the time because a friend sent me them. But recently there's more songs leaked because they had some of their songs put on Rock Band and Guitar Hero, and you need some of the multi-tracks to make that work. Wolfpack, sorry, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Harmonic bend towards the beginning. Harmonic bend. Sorry, man, I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure what part that is. Which drive pedal, E-Blue? Well, here's the thing. I'm not sure because I mentioned this before. Once again, if you're just joining me, there's a post in the description about like there's a text post where I talk about the effects and like visuals of my setup as well. So I think the main thing about a drive pedal is that it needs to go with a compressor, because you need to have the sustain of a good drive pedal, but you need to have the clean, like a clean sound as well, because you need the clarity in a lot of the chords. So I wouldn't necessarily know exactly what drive pedal, but I'd say maybe experiment with a compressor as well as a drive pedal. And I mean, my gains never goes past halfway. It's all set at 12 o'clock. I'll show you again in case there's people joined. So this is my distortion without a compressor on. Didn't get much out of that harmonic there. So let me put the compressor on. A bit better. Again, I was in the wrong pickup. I need to stop doing that. So without the compressor, here's the harmonic. You can hear it dying out. Put the compressor on. You can go and have a bite and you'd still be hearing that one. No. So yeah, look for a compressor as well. I think that's key. Compressor, half gain distortion, gives you that tone. Add some chorus, add some delay. Emails. Yeah, reverb. I add reverb on when I'm recording. I don't use the reverb on here, but I would use it right at the end of my signal changes to add a bit of like sparkly highs. So I'd go compressor, distortion, chorus, delay, EQ, and then reverb to give a bit of a high end sheen. I use the EQ because with the reverb you don't want it to be too muddy with the low frequencies. So as long as you get that idea in there, you can use anything. Well, not anything, but you don't have to use anything specific, I should say. Rock and roll. Yeah, there's a Steve Clark interview where he talked about them building up certain parts of the songs on Pyromania string by string, like on like the type of chords you'd find on Coming Under Fire. In fact, I made a video on this. It's called String by String, a Def Leppard recording process. So there you've got weird inversions that you don't necessarily hear in rock, like minor thirds. augmented fourths. So in order to make them sound clean, because you get a lot of dissonance when you do that, they built them up string by string. And Steve said that in an interview, which I should have linked in that video, but I didn't. So Rezer, yeah, they did on Pyromania, and then the bit on Hysteria is, of course, the pre-chorus. Yeah, eBlue, I'll be uploading this video again. Well, I'll be uploading it afterwards, but check out the post in the description. I've got a text document which basically says everything I've said. And I've got all my settings on there too. Oh, so one of those ones, yeah, Wolfpack. You get a harmonic in like around about the 3rd fret. There's lots of harmonics down here between 4 and 3 and 2. And if you depress the whammy bar as you go into it, you get a cleaner sound. Okay. Right, now there's a couple of requests from my Patreons to highlight some things, so I'm going to do that now. Because I think I've gone through all the equipment stuff. Like I say, if there's any questions, I'll maybe be on for another... What's the time? Oh, I've been on an hour, not bad. Another 10 minutes or so. But one request was to highlight, I believe... Well, I said I'd maybe highlight the way Phil plays Love and Affection live now, because when I did my cover, there was no video of them playing it live. And then they did the Viva Hysteria, so I'm just going to highlight that for my Patreon guy. And yeah, I've got a lot of tabs on my Patreon site, or like my notation notes, and I've got Love and Affection up there. And it's notated the way Phil now plays, which is something like this. Let's see. So, let's see. Missed that last note in there, but so that's how Phil plays that now. That little shape around 5 and 9, 5, 7, 5, 9. It's a bit of a stretch, but I think that's probably the way he did it all those years ago as well. I did something different. I went over a few different strings. I did something down there for some reason. It's a hell of a lot easier the proper way. Okay, and I was asked to show a certain riff on Tears for Fears' Everybody Wants to Rule the World. So the two chords on Everybody Wants to Rule the World is like a D major 7 played open 2-2 starting on the D string, and then a G over D, so the open D and then open G and then third of the B. So in the second chorus, the way I play it is I just played the triplet riff. So I didn't quite tab it out because it's hard to write out all those notes. I was on the sound slice as well, which was like a real pain. But so it's like, that's the triplet sound. Think of it like saying strawberry, 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 and that's what gets you through. Even the main solo is built on that, you know. So you need to get that wrist into that triplet feel, and you'll be able to do that. Okay. Where do we get to? Oh, Dom's the Panda. I've actually just read out the equipment they used on Adrenalize. Don't worry, this video will be uploaded, and I will make a video which goes through all the equipment they've used on live tours from Hysteria onwards. That might be a while away though, because I've been thinking about doing that since this time last year. Okay, maybe a few more minutes before I head. I hope this has been helpful. Like again, there's post in the description for basically everything I've talked about is like in a post. So check that out. How does the Don't Shoot Shotgun chorus lead part go? Oh, the solo. The solo I think was built up string by string again. You know, harmonies. So one guitar just be going, and one. I think there's a third guitar in there as well. But the lead line in the chorus, I just used to play. So 4 in the G, open B, same note, and then add in the 4 and 5 of the B. But live, you can see Phil, he adds like a slide in there. It's like something like that, I think. It's maybe a little bit loose. I guess that's maybe how they did it on the record. Hey Thelma. There you go. Okay, I'll do a couple more little licks and rest before I go. How does Phil play the pre-chorus on Animal nowadays? Well, I think he's still playing it the way he did it on the Hysteria tour, because when he's singing, he doesn't play it as on the record. He kind of does. Whereas, you know, it's more. But I think that's to do with him singing as well. Okay, I'll just keep mentioning one more time. There's a post in the description which talks about everything I've tried to talk about. And this video will be getting uploaded at some point. YouTube uploads them automatically. So yeah, check out the post. It's on my Patreon page. If you're interested in some of the notations that I do for my covers, they're on Patreon. It's like $5 a month, and basically for every new cover I do the notation. I'm trying to do a backlog. I'm trying to have a notation for every cover that I've done. So I'm always working towards that. Yeah, it's like they're like my notes interpretation, because some covers back in the day, you know, I was still playing them how I learned them as a kid, and they weren't necessarily correct. So the more recent ones are more likely to be more accurate. But there's certain songs on there where I've redone them. I've done like what do you call them, revised covers and stuff, where I think I've got them a bit more right, but even they might be a bit funny. But yeah, so if you're interested in notation and stuff, then check out the Patreon, and there's links in my description with email addresses if you want to get sorted on. If you want me to help you out with your tone as well, you know, I could do like Skype lessons like that, and I can just do normal Skype lessons and guitar video lessons, you know, and custom notation, stuff like that. So be sure to check out the Patreon. Where do we get to? Heavy metal. There's an interview where they said about how they layered up that. Yeah, there's a lot of guitar. In fact, I think Heaven Is actually has the most guitar layers for that opening bit. You know. Have You Ever might be similar, but yeah, there's a cool interview with Phil around that time where he talked about building it up. And I said earlier when I was talking about the Adrenalize stuff, Phil tried a whole bunch of new stuff on that album, but he went back to the Rockman and the Palmer speaker system and everything like that. And it just kept building up and heavily EQing, because you can't build up the same the same tone all the time because it gets too much. So, you know, there'll be, if you were to get all the guitar parts, like there'll be certain guitar sounds which probably don't sound great, but they're added in there to make everything else sound good. Favorite Def Leppard album? Hysteria, easily. It's got everything for me. Okay, and the part for the chorus. Which part are you on about, Matthew? So I'm not sure. Rock and roll. I've been on YouTube since like 2011, 2012. Just doing random stuff. Thanks, Don. I love you too. Good. Okay, great. On Animal. Oh yeah, the part before the chorus. Middle neck, like here. I know that on the actual chorus he plays the bit up here now. He does 11/14. Okay, right. I think that's pretty much me. Okay, doke. Right, cheers, guys. That's gonna be me now. Yeah, I do like Heart. I do like a couple of Heart songs. I did a cover of well, half a cover of what do you call it? Alone. That's it. I did half a cover of that. Somewhere on the Hysteria tour, I think I'd like to go to. Top ends, just quickly. On the actual record, it's a clean guitar with some keyboards and also a distorted guitar playing the bass notes, and live it's just pan muted. Something like that. Okay, I think that's me, guys. Thanks very much for joining me again. Hopefully I can do another one pretty soon. Like I say, if you've just joined, if you've just missed everything, this video will be uploaded by YouTube automatically, but there's a Patreon post. Everyone can have access to it, and there's a text document basically about everything what I've said, and yeah, so be sure to check that out. Play something before closing. No one seemed to get this one. This is my next cover, part of the solo in it, the solo at the end, and no one seemed to get it, but I'm going to do it again because I'm trying to learn it. That's the solo in my next cover I'm trying to do, but there's a lot more to that. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. I've covered Cruise Control. You might need to retune your guitar. Well done, Adam Walker. You've got it. Great. Cheers, guys. That's me. Catch you next time. And I'm going to be awkwardly coming over to the phone to stop the stream, so if I see any more comments, I'll read them, but here we go. I'm not playing Sepultura. I've never heard them from, well, I know who they are. Danger, yeah, there's a couple of covers out there. Cheers, guys. Where's the X? There it is. Thanks. See ya.